All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining me. I know people are going to be joining as we crack on. Thanks, Ads Brendan31. Thank you for joining. Just say hello down below as you join. That would be really great. Just say hello in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. It's good to connect. It's good to meet lots of new people again on this. Each week we get different people joining us, which is really good. It's nice to make these kind of connections. So here we are, week 7, I think, of the Worship Leader Conversations. And in case you didn't notice, I put up a post on my Instagram feed earlier today with a list of who's coming in the next few weeks. So I think we've got the next 5 more weeks planned out with some really good speakers, really good people to chat to. I'm really looking forward to it. Some of them I have not met before. Some of them are old friends and have known for a long, long time. So it's really good to find more people to chat to. And if you're a worship leader, you're a worship team leader, a worship pastor, music director, no matter what kind of church or tradition or style or anything like that, it doesn't really matter. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in who you are as a leader and your journey as a leader and how you've grown, and the challenges that you faced and how you've got through it, the successes that you've had. This is what this is all about. This is all about us learning from each other, growing as leaders, and listening to other people's stories. One of the best ways of communicating vision, of communicating understanding and knowledge, of communicating anything really, is through story. Jesus used it all the time, and people use it all the time now to communicate ideas, to communicate desires and fantasies. They use it to communicate their passion and their vision. And so all of this is about giving people the opportunity to tell their story, to share it for other people to learn from. So all of these conversations are up on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. There's a link in my bio so you can connect up to that and catch up on the previous conversations. One of our guests watching with us tonight, Hilda, I spoke to Hilda about 5 weeks ago. And that was a really good conversation. So you need to check that out. There's some other people as well that we've been chatting to from all over the country. And we're going to be continuing to chat to people all over the country. I even spoke to a couple of weeks ago, Brandon Dempsey from the States, who's a friend of mine. I've known him for a few years. And a really good conversation. So much stuff coming out of that conversation with Brandon. Hi, Creed29. Thanks for joining. It's good to see you. Please say hello down in the comments as you join. Let us know where you're watching from. So tonight I'm going to be talking to Rich Butt, who is the worship pastor of King's Church in Eastbourne. I've not met Rich before, but I reached out on Facebook to ask for people to chat to, and Rich was one of the people that got back to me. So I'm really looking forward to chatting to Rich tonight, getting to know him, finding out about his story. Before I do that, I just want to mention 631 Worship is happening this Sunday evening, starting at 7 o'clock. It's going to be happening on Zoom. We're not going to be able to meet with each other anymore, at the moment anyway. So we're going online, we're going virtual with 631 Worship, which is basically gathering worship team members from all over to just spend some time, about an hour and a half, just spend some time together, listening to the hearts of different leaders. Hilda's going to be one of the speakers there. We've got another speaker called Mark, who I spoke to, was the very first person I spoke to on these conversations, actually. He's a worship leader over in Portsmouth. We're going to be sharing our hearts to, just for like 10 minutes each at a time. We're going to be breaking off into breakout groups for people so that you can spend some time chatting to people that you probably never met before, talking over what the leaders have been sharing, taking it deeper, getting some more meat out of what the conversation has been about. And we're going to have the chance to pray together as well. And it's going to be a great time of just connecting with other worship teams and other worship leaders and other worship people from all over the place. We've got people joining us from upstate New York. We've got people joining us from Ecuador. We've got people joining us from all over the UK. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun evening. You need to get booked in at 631worship.com. It's free. It's completely free. Just book your place in and you join us via Zoom. You'll get sent the details probably Friday or Saturday. You get the login details. But book your teams in. Hi, Steve Glenn. Thank you for joining us. It's good to see you. say hello down below. Steve, you need to join us for 631 Worship this Sunday. You need to bring your team in as well. 631worship.com. You need to head there. But thanks for joining us, Steve. Stick with us. It's going to be really fun. All right. So yes, 631 Worship. You need to check that out. Right. I am going to bring in Rich, and we're going to have a chat and talk about his journey as a worship pastor. Here we go. Are we ready? Hey, here he is.
Bonjour, how are we doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Like you, on the south coast, where it's nice. It's been, yeah, kind of nice temperature today, hasn't it? Except I've been stuck in this room, working on all the stuff for worship for this Sunday's service, as I'm sure many people in my my position and our position are doing at the moment.
It seems to be the case, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for joining me, Rich. So like I said earlier, I've never met you before. I reached out on Facebook and you were one of the guys that responded. So thank you so much for giving up time and to chat with me. Tonight, this is all about hearing your journey and where you've come, the things that you've come through, where you are now as a worship pastor and as a team leader and all that kind of stuff. But to kind of get us to that place, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you've been in terms of leading worship and being involved in worship teams, and where you are now?
Yeah, great. Well, so I am 31, and I'm originally a Southeast London boy.
Oh, really?
From the Tulse Hill area. So I Tulse Hill.
Oh, okay.
Tulse Hill, near Brixton. So
okay, yes.
I grew up going to a little Baptist church there called New Park Road Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Which my parents went to, and my grandparents were involved there in various ways. My grandfather was the treasurer there and all sorts of stuff like that. And my mum's Jamaican and my dad's English. Yep. So I'm mixed heritage British individual.
Yes.
And so I've basically been in church my whole life.
Yeah.
And first properly got involved in worship when we moved over from Tulse Hill over the other side of Crystal Palace to a place called Penge.
Yeah.
And we started attending a New Frontiers church there. And probably that was when I was about 9 or so. And got involved in a little youth band that the worship pastor there at the time started up, and all of that good stuff. And just started serving and got invited to kind of start singing backing vocals in the worship team. So I did that probably from the age of about 11 or 12 until I went off to uni, really. And then came back from uni, and then was kind of like, all right, well, I want to kind of do a little bit more with this. Over that time, I'd gotten introduced to Noel Robinson, who many of you guys will know.
Yeah.
And Noel invited me to come and sing as part of the Renewal Worship Conference that he was doing, which is like his thing. So I did that first one, and then after that first one, he was like, "Hey, do you want to come on tour with me as we go around the place?" And I was like, "Yes, please."
Yeah,
that would be fun. And honestly, like, that just opened me up to a whole world of worship that I didn't even, I knew existed, but I hadn't really experienced it, because I'd grown up in a Baptist church and then going to New Frontiers churches where it was, it was all Matt Redman, Tim Hughes, and Hillsong.
Yeah.
And I knew of gospel music, I knew of gospel artists, but it wasn't really the expression that I'd been used to in church. Yeah. So but I loved all of that music. I loved soul music, trained as a singer and learning to do all of that stuff and sing all of those songs. And so getting invited to go out and about with Noel was just like incredible.
Great opportunity.
It was amazing. So I toured with Noel for about almost 10 years, actually.
Wow.
and actually I stopped touring with Noel when I got offered a position as a worship pastor at a church that's based in central London. So it's Christchurch, London, which is run by a guy called Dave Stroud.
Yeah.
And he's kind of an interesting chap because his wife Philippa is a Tory peer in the House of Lords.
Okay.
And so between the two of them, they're just an incredibly formidable couple. So it was a great privilege to kind of serve under him and work there. So that I served as worship pastor there for about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And that was amazing because I arrived just at the point when the church moved from like 2 services on one site. I arrived, or like the week before I started the job, they then split to 4 services on 4 different sites.
Oh, wow.
Just like, and then it was like, okay, so make worship happen in all of these.
In 4 sites, in 4 places.
Yeah.
Drop right
Hot potato, go for it. And then kind of unexpectedly, probably about 1.5 years ago, we started feeling like, oh, maybe God's starting to bring a bit of restlessness into our hearts. And usually for me and my wife, that usually means that he's about to move us on somewhere, or ask us to do something. And my wife's from Eastbourne.
Okay, yes.
And so our daughter was coming up to her first birthday, and we're trying to, in that transition phase of figuring out what you do with life and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And all of the things just aligned for us to come and move down here to Eastbourne and to join King's Church down here, which is another New Frontiers roots church. Yeah. And kind of join as worship pastor. Now they had Pete, worship leader called Pete James was involved there at King's for a little while, but other than him, the church in its kind of like 30-year history has never really had a worship pastor. Okay. So this is kind of a new venture for them. Yeah. And I arrived just as there was basically a big transition just about to happen in the senior leadership of the church. So that seems to be a bit of part of my story.
It's a common theme here.
I don't know whether it's because of, I don't think it's because of me, but I seem to arrive at moments of big transition. So beware if ever you hire me. Something's probably going to change.
Fantastic.
So we've been down here in Eastbourne for literally just over a year.
Yeah. So, okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. And is the church in Eastbourne Kings, was your wife connected to that previously, or is that you just came to that?
Yeah. So she actually grew up going to. She was in a closed brethren meeting growing up. Yeah. So like very, very different to my experience. I'm like very much like charismatic, gifts of the Spirit, all that kind of stuff. And she was from a very closed brethren background. And when she was quite young, her parents left there and went to a Baptist church. So we kind of had that in common. Yeah. And when we first met, she kind of started exploring the charismatic and gifts of the Spirit and all this kind of stuff. And so she kind of hooked in with King's, which was where some of her friends were going. And they've been amazingly supportive of a charity actually that she started called Bramber Bakehouse, which uses baking and educational skills to basically help women that have been exploited and kind of get their lives back. In fact, amazing, they just won the Queen's Award for charity, which is an amazing thing. But anyway, that's on the side. But go check them out.
Is that Bramber Bakehouse, was that?
Bramber, Bramber. Yeah.
Bakehouse, fantastic,
So she was kind of involved and they were helping support the charity in its infancy. And so, she kind of had a bit of a connection with them before.
And so how do you find, because Eastbourne has had a reputation, shall we say, for being the kind of the centre of retirement. It seems to be the place where it always used to be talked about and joked about as a place where people would go to retire. How do you find it living in Eastbourne? What's it really like?
That's definitely true. There definitely are a lot of retired folk around, and a lot of like older folks around. But there's also like an increasing number of people my age
Yeah.
that either work in London and commute,
Okay. Yes.
or they're from the area and they've kind of grown up here and they've kind of stayed here, or gone like my wife did, gone to
Yeah.
London for a few years and then come back. So there is an increase because sort of property's not quite as expensive. It's not as expensive as Brighton.
Yeah.
And only half an hour up the road from Brighton, and so it's getting younger. But yeah, there definitely are older folks here too as well.
Sure. I can imagine. Okay. So your worship team now, so you've been here for a year, you've been leading the team here for a year. Does your team have a vision statement or a mission statement? And if so, what is that statement?
So as you can imagine, with a sort of arriving at a time when there's like a change in leadership, there's a change in basically all sorts of things going on in church life. And so actually as a church, we're kind of asking lots of those questions of like, okay, what are we going to be about?
Yeah.
And I think for me, I've always found it an interesting thing when worship teams have their own vision statement that's like almost like different to what the church's vision statement is. And I've almost always thought, well, whatever the church is saying, this is I mean, of course, for all churches, our vision is the Great Commission.
Sure.
Right? It's to know Christ and make Christ known. That's the crux of what we're wanting to do. But how we specifically feel like we're going to outwork that, I've always felt like, so like at Christ Church London, the thing was always, wanting to see working for the spiritual, social and cultural renewal of London.
Okay.
Yeah. And I always just thought, well, okay, how are we going to do that with worship?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, I didn't feel like I needed to come up with my own vision statement because the church had one. I'm like, right, we're going to support that with everything that worship can do. So for us at King's at the moment, it's kind of in the same place. Like as we are formulating what things are going to be moving forwards, I'm just thinking, okay, how are we going to support that mission and that goal with worship?
Yeah. And have you gone through any kind of process, as part of the leadership of the church in finding its vision and its voice, and also with your team, have you gone through any kind of process where you're communicating what's going on in the leadership and what they're seeing as their vision or their mission? How are you communicating that into the team, and how are you doing that?
Yeah, so essentially, as and when there is concrete stuff to share, and actually even when there's questions being asked and we want to get input from other people, a lot of this stuff has kind of really kind of come to a fore and come to like a head as the lockdown kind of happened. So a lot of the conversations are just happening in Zoom meetings, and just saying, hey, we're talking about this thing at the moment, what do you guys think about this? And getting people's opinions, really, and starting to work with it with that way, to be honest. And it's still very much in an embryonic kind of place, and so I plan to do a whole lot more conversation and a whole lot more here's an idea, shoot it down if you want. Like, I much prefer to take an agile approach to working, as in start down a course, and then start to adjust as you go, and find your way as you go. It's kind of more my style.
That's cool. All right, so what have been some of the biggest challenges that you faced as a team leader? And I guess we can talk as well about your time on tour with Noel and your previous time at Christchurch. There's some of the biggest challenges that you faced as a team leader and how you've overcome them.
Yeah, so I think serving people well is always the biggest challenge, and keeping people the center of what you're doing. Because if you're the two churches that I've been part of, in a, you know, worship pastoring capacity, have been churches that have both had a lot of resource as far as people go, lots of skilled people involved, but also like a desire to do big things as well.
Yeah.
And so it can be so easy to get focused on all the stuff like, oh, have we got all the right equipment, and, you know, oh, should we use tracks, and, you know, or can we do this, that, and the other, and like, what's the lights doing, and all of that stuff, and actually forget that the core of what you do is people and individuals, and it's helping each individual to become the fullest expression of a worshipper that they can be.
Yeah.
You know, like in thinking of, you know, the whole excellence thing, that what I'm always trying to do is to help each individual to become the best that they can be.
Yeah.
You know, when Scripture talks about play skillfully unto the Lord, what does that look like for you? And how can I help you to become, you know, the best version of you?
Yeah.
In that particular way, but to focus it on the individual rather than the stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's always a challenge that we can face.
Yeah.
Particularly in this modern age where there's so much stuff. There's iPads and there's tracks and there's, you know, goodness knows what else.
Can I ask as well? I mean, obviously we're in a. Sorry, my daughter's just walked in. See you later, sweetheart. And sorry, Rich. Sorry. What?
No worries.
Okay, right. She's just grabbing her pens. She's supposed to be in bed, but grabbing her pens. So I was going to ask. I was going to ask, because obviously we're in a time worldwide at the moment where Black Lives Matter is very much at the fore, rightly so. For me, I'm still learning. I'm reading. I'm listening. But I would love to give you the opportunity to kind of to share your voice on this platform. You know, however small this platform is, but still, some of the obstacles that you faced yourself and how you've overcome them. To, you know, within the context of worship, are there any? Is there anything that you want to kind of speak into on that? I would love to hear it. Yeah,
definitely, because I think the time that I spent with Noel was like so eye-opening for so many different reasons. Not least because you know, one day we could be in a very culturally Nigerian Black majority church one day, and we're kind of playing like African high life praise music, and, you know, the whole place is just like riotous with joy, and it's amazing. And literally the next day we could be at the Baptist Union convention where we have to change all the lyrics of the song so that they're gender neutral.
Sure.
You know, and so you just get, you've got complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And something that Noel always used to say to us is like, you know, it's different expressions but the same spirit.
Yeah.
And I think it's been interesting for me, like growing up, and, you know, in my very personhood, I am a combination of two cultures coming together.
Yeah.
And I do actually think that has a part to play in my spiritual calling as well. Yeah. But I think as far as the challenges for me, like I think being a person that's mixed, I have the benefit of a certain amount of white privilege, to use that terminology.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting thing, because I think sometimes, like, I felt like I know how to leverage my whiteness, so to speak, in order to be viewed as safe, or as worthy of being given responsibility within a church context, as being, you know, meek and mild and reasonable. And but yet at times, as soon as it can sometimes feel like as soon as more of your blackness comes out, that actually sometimes you can be pushed away.
Sure.
As a result of that, and that has happened.
Yeah.
From time to time. I mean, I think the thing that's interesting for me is like growing up in churches where, you know, the pretty much the dominant culture within those churches was, as I say, as far as like worship was concerned, was definitely like the Bethel, the Hillsong, the Matt Redman. So, you know, more of your white majority church contexts.
Yeah.
And it was only after I started to tour around with Noel, and he does this thing where he'll take songs that other people have written, and he'll just do his complete like own arrangement of it. And it's not like a gospel version of it; it's a whatever version he felt he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But you know, he doesn't change the lyrics. He doesn't change the melody that everybody knows. It's just everything else is up for grabs, and it's kind of like comes from this sort of like jazz sensibility that he has.
Yes.
But before I met him, I didn't know that was allowed.
Yes.
You know, because I grew up, you know, when you grow up in that sort of white church setting, excellence looks like copying the CD.
Yes.
Like down pat,
Yeah.
or at least it used to.
Yeah.
Whereas Noel kind of blew that all out of the water for me, because it was like, no, you can express yourself. So when we were at Christchurch, what we tried to do, the church was becoming increasingly diverse, and there wasn't that much representation of that on the worship team. That changed over the years that I was there, but I think part of the reason why it changed was because I just decided one day, do you know what? I'm not playing any album version of any song that we do on a Sunday ever. That's it. That's done. Finished. We're going to do our own arrangements of absolutely everything. Yeah. And I'm going to try and tailor these songs to who is in our congregation and who we would like to be in our congregation. Sure. So I'm going to, you know, change the harmonic structure of the songs and give it a little bit more crunch and make it a little more gospel. I'm going to change the backbeats of the song so it kind of feels a little bit more hip hoppy or whatever, but not, but you know, reinterpret the song. And it was kind of funny. I always joked with a friend of mine that we knew we landed on something good when all the black folk in the audience were nodding their heads. Yes. And all the white folk had their hands raised in
yeah, we've nailed it.
Lost in worship, and that was the happy medium. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Yeah. Being a person of color in this world. You know, I write some of my own songs and do some. So when you're like starting to explore your own creativity, it's quite hard to know, oh, well, where do I pitch this? If I write what I feel, then I almost have no context within which to play this, because it's a mixture of music of white origin and music of black origin. It's kind of this mixture, and it sort of exists in this place that's kind of, there's no space for it yet. Yes. The worship industry has no space for it. It's either gospel or it's CCM. Yeah. And so it can be difficult to know where to sit, and do I change my style to make it more this or more that? Yeah. So yeah. It definitely can be a challenge. But I would say that I've had some wonderful conversations with people over this past week. I decided that I was going to start sharing some of my experiences of sort of racial microaggressions that I guess that I've experienced over some of my life. Some of them are not so micro, and others of them are more micro. But I think the amazing thing about it is that it sparked an opportunity to have conversations with people. And I think what's incredible about this time is just how open people seem to be to even consider the idea that they may have some kind of racial prejudice or racial bias. Yeah. And it seems like not even that long ago, it was like everyone was like, "No, I'm colorblind." Did that mean, I don't see color. Yeah. And the thing is like every person of color wants you to see color. Yes. Like we want you to see our difference, and we want you to celebrate it in the same way that we want to affirm the uniqueness and the difference of male and female.
Yeah.
You know, if we miss celebrating our difference, we miss a huge thing.
Yeah.
It seems so important to God that we read in Revelation that every tribe and tongue is gathered around the throne declaring holy, holy, holy.
Yes.
So our culture and our race seems so important that it exists still in heaven.
Yes. Yeah.
You know. So
yeah. No, it's fantastic.
I could say way more, but
sure, I'm sure. I'm sure. No, thank you for sharing even that. It's just so good. Thank you. So getting back to your role as a worship pastor, have there been anything that you've done with your team that just went really well, and you thought that this was really good, I should do more of this, or, you know, I should tell someone else this works really well, we should do this?
Yeah, listening to people.
Yep.
You know, we at the beginning of this lockdown, one of the worship leaders in the team said, "Oh, we should do some worship like in the mornings." Or I've been thinking about doing some worship in the morning and doing this thing just to help people during the lockdown. And I just went, do you know what? That's a brilliant idea. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to steal that, and I'm going to do what I can as far as like administration behind it, and try and organize some people to do it. So since the beginning of the lockdown, Monday to Friday, we've had half an hour of worship every morning. Some Saturdays as well.
Okay. And how have you been doing that? Have you been putting that online, or you just?
Yeah, so some people have been pre-recording and uploading it onto Facebook, and then others of us have been doing it live as well.
Okay, yes.
So it's kind of a mixture to sort of make it manageable for different people's schedules and stuff.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I think generally speaking, things that go really well are when you can be humble, admit when you make mistakes. So when I was at Christchurch, we recorded an album, and we were, you know, we wanted to do this thing. We were like, right, we want to have this offering of culture to the City of London. This was part of our way of, okay, how can we contribute to the cultural renewal of the you know, city that we're living in?
Yeah.
So we've recorded this album, and there were probably at that point about 60 or 70 people involved in the worship team.
Wow.
And maybe only probably like 5 or 6 were actually involved in the record.
Okay.
And that was a big mistake on my part.
Okay.
I thought I had found ways to involve more people, but turns out I didn't.
Okay.
And like after the fact, like I remember having conversation after conversation with people who'd be like, man, I've been serving at this church for years, and, you know, I didn't get any opportunity to be involved, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to just get to a point where I was just like, I gathered the whole team together, and I was like, do you know what, guys, I messed up.
Yeah.
I missed this. I was so focused on this other goal.
Yeah.
Which, you know, everybody could then agree after the fact, like that goal was really good. But I gained more as a leader, and gained more trust and more influence, and grew closer with everyone in that team when I stood there and went, do you know what, I messed up. Yeah. And I remember hearing some of the team kind of report back afterwards, just saying, you know, any leader that can stand up and do that is a person I can follow.
Yeah.
And I learned a very, very valuable lesson that day, which is, you know, just always admit your mistakes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, my next question was going to be, is there anything that you've done that you wish you hadn't? I guess you've answered it there, really, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, there's loads like that. You know, that's a big one. I mean, I think the others are always the ways in which you sort of deal with the challenging conversation, the challenging pastoral conversations.
Yeah.
Christchurch was an interesting environment for that, because the church was wanting to be so open to those who hadn't hadn't had any experience of faith or church at all.
Yeah.
That we were actually in the place where we were kind of saying, do you know what? Even if you don't profess faith in Christ, we'd still be happy for you to be involved in the worship team.
Okay.
If you can, like, almost intellectually understand that we believe that this is more than music.
Yeah.
That what we're doing is we're wanting to serve people in engaging with God.
Sure.
And if you're happy to play music that is working to that goal when you're not even sure whether God even exists, if you're comfortable with that, then we're comfortable with that, and we'll go on the journey with you.
Yeah.
And that was wild. That was great. It was great fun. And it challenged my own views on that.
Yeah.
And the whole thing as well. But yeah, man, the mistakes of, I think, like, I'm kind of an opinionated person, and I often speak first and think afterwards. And yeah, in pastoral situations, that's just not
It's not a good idea, is it?
That's not a wise thing to do at all. So yeah, learning to talk less is definitely a important thing.
It's interesting you're talking about involving musicians or singers who aren't necessarily in faith yet. One of my friends from school, I went to secondary school with years ago, got married to actually another friend from school who was a worship leader at their church, but he was an atheist. I remember having arguments with him at school about whether God was real or not. And but he married a Christian woman, and she was the worship leader at their church. And so to help her out, he started playing piano for her. And one Sunday morning, he got saved in the middle of the worship. It's like all in one moment, this light bulb went on, and he thought, "This is real." And hearing his testimony again, like it challenged me. It challenged the way I think about those things. I mean, obviously we have, I don't want to call them standards, but you have expectations, and you want people to have integrity and character, but these also these opportunities for people to connect with God and with church, like that. It's you can't dismiss them, can you?
No, you definitely can't. I mean, I think one of the biggest things I would take away from my time at Christchurch was one of my colleagues, a guy called Liam Thatcher, who's just an incredible preacher and teacher of the word, and just a lovely, lovely human being as well. He would often say, like, discipleship actually starts long before a person even professes faith in Christ. Yeah. And actually, there's so many steps that a person takes.
Yes. Yeah.
That actually it was this concept that instead of like being Christian wasn't just this like a box that you can check a certain amount of boxes and it's like now you're a Christian. Yeah. It's actually recognizing that it's a journey closer towards Jesus. Yeah. And some are closer to him and some are further away, but we're all at some point in the journey. And if we look at it from that point of view, rather than like I've arrived, I'm a Christian and you're not, then actually it changes the way that I think we approach people that are either younger in the faith or they don't have any faith at all. Yeah. That was a huge thing for me, learning that.
Yeah, fantastic. I've had a question coming from Hilda, who asked, how did you find the transition going from touring with Noel to actually being based in a church and having a role as the worship pastor there?
Yeah. Oh, that was tough, because I was, like all of life changed. So I had grown up serving in the church that I grew up at. I was one of two worship leaders that would kind of basically lead every other week. The other guy was the worship pastor and I was a volunteer. And I would often be touring with Noel, get back at like 1 a.m. and then be at church for like 7 to get ready for the prayer meeting and, do the service at church. Yeah. Actually, like the traveling with Noel and the incredible sort of, sometimes we do like 3 hours of worship at a time. Yeah. You learn this endurance. So everything about life just changed. I think actually because it was something that I've been wanting an opportunity like this to kind of appear, and it did, like, it totally found me. Like, I didn't even go, I didn't go looking for it. God just kind of brought it my way, which is incredible. But it was a big transition, you know, to go from a life where essentially I set my own structure. I was completely self-employed. I did ran a vocal coaching business on the side, and did some mainstream session work as well as, you know, working with Noel. To then being in this office environment that was more structured than I could have possibly imagined working for a church could be. And it was hard. It was hard at first. It was like intellectually taxing. It was emotionally taxing. You know, you have imposter syndrome every single day, because, you know, you've gone from being the guy that sings backing vocals and tours with Noel, and that's amazing. But now you've got, you know, at the time, I think when I arrived, there were sort of like 30 or so people in the team, and 4 sites across this church, and this church has got this huge vision. And now they're like, I'm sitting in these leadership team meetings, and they're like, how are we going to make worship happen? And we want to do, you know, 8 services across 6 sites by 2020. So go, like, make it happen. So yeah, it was a huge transition. But, you know, it's when those things happen, it's an opportunity for God to enlarge your borders.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's good. This has been really great. It's fascinating hearing your journey. Thank you so much, Rich. I appreciate giving up your time for this. I've got one more question, and that is, has there been a particular word of advice or word of encouragement that you've received from someone that has stuck with you, that has particularly changed the way you think or shifted the direction you've gone, or something like that? One in particular.
I mean, I'm sure, like all of us, there've been many over the years. I think I'm trying to just pick one.
Well, you have a couple if you want.
I mean, I think really, I think the importance of mentors in my life has just been like a huge thing. Like, you know, obviously Noel is somebody that brings an incredible amount of experience, and I'm honored to be able to call him a friend and a mentor. And I think the thing that's actually been amazing about him is that I've learned more just by watching him than by necessarily him like telling me to do anything. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway from him is living a life of worship. Like, he never has to turn it on, because he never turns it off. And I think that we can think that that's a really spiritual thing, but it's the most practical thing in the world. It's just inviting God into every moment of your day. You know, it's like, thank you, God, for this cup of tea. Like, it seems ridiculous to say it, but I think when I started praying with my daughter, she's you know, almost 2. And I say to her, Olivia, what would you like to thank Jesus for today? And sometimes she says, I want to thank Jesus for pigeons. And I think really, like, pigeon. And at first in my head I go, we can't thank Jesus for pigeons. I go, no, actually we can. And we're going to. Do you know, like, we're going to, because she's learning that. She's learning that thing. And I think actually that's the thing. I've been trying, like, of all of the amazing words that I've received and people have spoken, I think the pursuit of finding God in the mundane things of everyday life is the thing that has changed everything for me, because you can find him no matter what you're doing.
Yes, that's right. That's fantastic. You can learn so much from watching your children learn about God, And we've got a she's going to be 7 in a couple of days' time, 7-year-old daughter. We've got older boys as well. One of them's married. But watching certainly our youngest daughter, Matilda, grow up and learn to understand who God is bit by bit, and some of the stuff that she comes out with, and you start to think, now do we have a theological discussion here about this, or do we just kind of like, okay, yeah, yes, okay then, we'll just go with that for now, that's fine, and we'll deal with that a couple of years down the road when you can understand it a little bit better. But it does challenge your thinking. Certainly for me, it challenges my thinking about fatherhood and who the father is to me, because of how I want to father my children. So that's challenged me in many ways. So
yeah, absolutely. Kids are just incredible for that, aren't they? I mean, I remember when Olivia was first learning to walk, and I just almost like God spoke to me in that moment, and I was like, do you get upset with her when she falls over when she's learning to walk? And I'm like, no, of course I don't. Like, she's learning.
Yes.
And it's like, why do you get upset with people that are new in the faith or learning things, or anybody that's I'm just revealing something to? And I think actually that's an important lesson for everyone in the whole, situation with, like, Black Lives Matter and all of that. It's like, actually, like, let's have grace for one another. I know that there's been years and years of hurt and difficulties that people experience, but let's try and be gracious with one another, and remember that we all have blind spots.
Yes, that's right.
In all of this, and kids, they're beautiful, beautiful little things.
Thank you so much, Rich. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you and hear your journey. And I know that there's been so much good stuff. And I know we've had some people watching here tonight. I think some of them are people from your team or people that they've been cheering you on. It's been great. And this will be going out on YouTube as well, so more people will be able to catch up with this later. There's been such good stuff coming out. So rich. It's been great. Rich from Rich. I didn't mean to use that pun. I apologise. That was terrible.
All right, everyday Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for giving up your time. I really appreciate it. And I hope that we can continue to stay in contact. It'll be good to connect up again sometime. Hopefully, sometime when this is all over, we can sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk properly.
Absolutely.
That'd be really good. That'd be really good.
Yeah, I'd love that. Great. We're not so far away from each other, are we?
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rich. I'll see you around soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow, thank you so much for watching, guys. That has been a really great conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got loads out of it. I did. I love hearing people's stories because there's so much to learn. We always like to think that there's a fairly rigid journey of learning how to lead a worship team, in that you build the team, you tell people what to do, you do the songs, and the way you go. But it's so nuanced, and there's so many different ways of doing the same thing, which I love. I think it's amazing that we can find so many different ways to do the same thing. And so I want to learn from the way other people are doing what I'm doing. And it's a great opportunity to hear people's stories and learn from their mistakes and learn from their successes as well. So thank you so much, those of you that have stuck all the way through to the end of this. And thank you for those of you that are watching this on YouTube, catching up at a later time. Next week, I'm going to be chatting to Tim Hitchin, who is the worship and youth coordinator, I think that's right, at, I'll check my notes, Connect Church in Birmingham. So I've connected with Tim over Facebook. He's a great guy. It sounds like he's a really good, fun guy to chat to. I've been watching some of the stuff he's been posting on Facebook with him and his son playing golf. Hilarious. Join me next Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock. So I'll be chatting to Tim, and then also check on my Instagram profile, because there's a whole list of people I'm going to be chatting with over the next 5-6 weeks. And if you're a worship team leader and you would like to share your journey, to share some of the things that you've gone through, some of the successes that you've had, the things that you've learned, I would love to give the opportunity for you to share that story and join me on a future Instagram Live. Get in touch with me either on Instagram or on Facebook. I would love to hear your story and chat with you like I've just done with Rich. It'd be so good to catch up with you. Just get in contact with me, let me know. Don't forget, book in for 631 Worship at 631worship.com, and I'll see you if you're coming. I will see you this Sunday evening. Otherwise, I will see you next Tuesday. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.